break. Halftime show presented by Lee Vogler for Danville City Council. And tonight we are talking to Lee Vogler for Danville City Council. This afternoon I sent you an email and said, hey, what do you want to talk about tonight? I mean, your show, what do you want to? And the first thing you said on here, well, I don't know if you could bring it up, but this to me is amazing. I don't have a cell phone. Okay. If I did have a cell phone, 4 people might know the number. You are giving your cell phone number out to anybody, and this is not some corporate cell phone that goes to an answering service or something. This is your cell phone number. Anybody with a question and about city politics, anything having to do with council or the city government, you're begging for them to call you.
Yeah.
That's insane, buddy.
Well, no, when I talk about being a voice for the people,
right.
That's not some catchy thing that looks cool on a yard sign. I really mean it. And so I've always tried to be as accessible as possible, and I've given it out to folks over the years. But, there's going to be a lot of folks voting this time in this election who may not be familiar with their council. So I'm trying to just spread the word to, like, if you need help or there's a question or anything city council can help with, call me, text me, and it's 434-548-5335, and that's the same number I've had since I was 16 years old, so it's not changing anytime soon. So,
like I said, if I had a cell phone, it would be guarded better than the Pentagon. But again, you're in the public service, and you mentioned something just now that the number of new people we have here in Danville. We have, from a percentage standpoint, we have quite a few first-time City of Danville voters because of the demographics, people coming in, a lot of new people, thank goodness, for things like the casino and whatnot. You're having to introduce yourself to a lot of people this year. I mean, yeah, for people who've lived in Danville for a few years, you're a known commodity. We got some newbies here.
Yeah, we do. I mean, folks may not realize this, but we're third best in the state in terms of people moving in versus moving out, and that's not per capita. I mean, those are raw numbers.
Net migration, yeah.
People are choosing to come here, which is great. It's exciting, but there are a lot of new faces and a lot of new folks. Matter of fact, I was down at the early voting precinct today, and several of the folks, my kids were with me today. They had a teacher work day, so they got to hang out with Dad.
Right. Yeah.
And so they were down there being a part of the process, and but yeah, there were a lot of folks who said, we just moved here recently. One of the couples was from Charlotte, some other folks from Maryland. So that's
cool.
And they're coming here for a number of reasons, and it's really exciting. And I love meeting new folks, and I grew up here, but I love when we get new energy in here too.
There's got to be a bit of a validation for the work you're doing, because again, if we have a council that's not doing a good job, if we have a bad economy, if we have a moribund economy, which we've had before, people are not coming here, but they're coming here now.
Right.
And that's got to be validation.
It does. It feels good. You think about 12 years ago, when I first came on the council, people were leaving Danville in droves. And you couldn't give away a house in Danville. And
Trust
now
me, I know.
We can't build, right. So
we can't build them fast enough.
We can't build them fast enough now. And I understand that sometimes you have headaches of growth, and there are short-term things that the struggles of that we are rapidly working to overcome. But at the same time, I would much rather have the challenges we have today versus the challenges we had before.
We have a much better quality of problems these days. That's the best thing. You're always going to have issues. You're going to have that, but the quality of our problems now are much better than it was a few years ago. I mean, just a few years ago.
Absolutely.
That's the thing. Casino, we mentioned it. It's the elephant in the room. You can't not talk about it, but we're getting quite a bit of coin from that, and we've already set aside quite a bit of it into direct fund for some one-time things. We're now looking at some other things to do with that, and I know that's come up on the campaign trail. What are you hearing, and what are you saying about that?
Well, I think what we have done, which is smart, is that we're making these strategic kind of one-time capital improvement projects that are good use. But at the same time, something that I've been talking about that I think is really important is we have an opportunity now to look out for our citizens. And we can do that through tax relief, which, we talked about that last time. We got some of that through this year. I want to do even more, but also to lower utility bills for folks. And you can do that through a number of things. Lowering the rates is certainly part of it, but I think also to make accessible more programs and more things to help people's homes be more energy efficient. We do some of that already anyway, but let's take some of this casino money and let's get to the root cause of why people's bills are high. Some of it's rates, some of it are the homes themselves, and let's really try to help people get their bills down. And so I think we have the funds and the revenue to do that, and so I want to help people's bills come down, because the important thing about the casino is folks voted for it overwhelmingly, but I think that folks need to see and feel and share in that prosperity that the casino is bringing here. And if they don't, then they're going to start to turn against it, and they should. And so I think it's important that we as elected officials make sure we're looking out for our citizens first and foremost.
Having a few dollars towards energy efficiency program can make a world of difference. I got a more energy efficient heat pump 3 years ago, and instantly my power bill was cut by 40%.
Right.
It paid for itself in 2 years.
Exactly. And so I think, again, we obviously should look at the rates, because I think that there are things that we can do that will help with that. But at the same time, maybe it's more beneficial to help people purchase these more energy efficient items that will lower their bills long term.
Right.
And so I think we need to look at all of those things. We need an all of the above approach. I think it would be easy to say, let's just lower the rates, but let's be smart about it, and let's do the thing that long term is going to help the most people for the longest amount of time.
Yeah, this is something near and dear to my heart, because my wife is a city employee, and she has enjoyed the benefits of the healthcare changes that have been made, the clinic. Yep. Which has been, and you were an early supporter of that. That was not initially a popular idea some years ago. That thing has oh boy, that has taken off. You rarely hear city employees, my insurance is so good. No one ever says that, but they do, because, the clinic and other things, that's been a hit.
So, yeah, it's funny. One of the first things I did when I got on council was I published this document called the New Ideas Agenda, and in it was 7 different proposals. I won't go through them all, but the bike share was in there and a number of other things that have ultimately ended up happening. But within that was this concept of a city employee health clinic, which kind of, it's not a new concept. It goes back to the days of a company doctor. We used to have Dan River and these other places that literally would have the medical facilities for their employees. And so I pushed for it for a long time. And unfortunately, before Ken Larkin became our city manager, I couldn't get a lot of traction with it.
Right.
When Ken came in, I brought it back around. Ken bought into it big time. And so we were able to do it. And it's got 100% satisfaction rate from the employees.
You don't get that.
You don't see that.
That doesn't happen.
At one point it was 97%, and I felt good about that. But the last time they said now it's 100, and I said fantastic.
Even better.
And the other thing, so folks, if you're not a city employee or family member of city employee, you think, okay, well, what does that mean for me? It saved the taxpayers $180,000 over the last few years too. So it is a win-win across the board. And something that I'm really happy we were able to do. Yeah,
from a cost-effective standpoint, again, anytime the city can pay less for insurance for its employees, that's one of the big line items. I think right now also shifting gears and talking about community policing, I think we're starting to see, if we hadn't already, the benefits of the reshuffling that when they came in under the former police chief Scott Booth, who laid a real good foundation, I think, and one of our boys, Chris Wiles, of course, now the police chief of Danville. Yeah. That's something you talked about before it became popular too. I remember, like your first term, you were talking about community policing. Everybody said it couldn't work here. It just you showed more than a little persistence on that, and when the preparation met the opportunity, we did some shifting around, and the numbers bear it out. It's worked.
Yeah, again, that was also in that New Ideas Agenda. It's funny to go back and look at that, but that was something I was talking about from the very beginning of getting on council, and then certainly around 2014, 15, 16, when crime was really just spiking here.
Right.
I kept saying, I know this will work. This has worked in places all across the country. It can work here, and unfortunately, again, I was a fairly new councilman, a young guy, not that long out of college.
You got to pay your dues, yeah.
And the chief of police prior to Scott Booth just had a different philosophy.
Sure.
And so, it was whose side are you going to take, the chief of police or this young councilman? And so I wasn't able to do it. But it came to a point to where crime was getting so bad, everyone said, okay, look, something's got to change. And so I'll never forget when Ken Larkin told me and called and told me that Scott Booth was being hired, because when we went through that process, I told him, I said, if you can find someone who came through that Richmond system when Chief Monroe was the chief, because I lived there at that time.
And I watched community policing.
Richmond was the murder capital of the East Coast. Yes. And then when Doug Wilder was mayor, he hired Monroe, and Monroe came in and implemented what we have now ultimately done here. Yeah. And it brought it down. And I saw it firsthand, and I knew it would work here. And so He called me. Ken said, "Lee, I think you're going to be happy." And he called to tell me it was Scott Booth.
Yeah.
And Chief Booth came through that system,
Right.
and he knew. And so he and I met before he even officially took the job, and we hit it off right away.
Right.
And I said, "This is a guy who gets it." And I mean, look, the results speak for themselves.
Well, it makes sense too. Just common sense. If the a policeman is going to be a policewoman is going to be working in an area, it makes sense to ingratiate yourself to the community. Again, these are going to be people that you're dealing with on very stressful days, and if they don't know you, they won't trust you.
Absolutely. And so I think it has helped bring crime down. And the other part of it, too, that I don't think it's talked about maybe enough is that it used to be when you had a murder or you had a crime,
Silence.
it was not getting
Yeah.
solved because no one would speak. And for the exact reason you just talked about,
Yeah.
they're not going to talk to somebody that they don't know.
Exactly.
And they get solved very quickly now.
Yeah.
And it's because they trust our police. And our police have done a phenomenal job being a part of the community. They do so many community events and
They
things,
do.
too, that go far beyond policing. And, I mean, quite frankly, I think we've got one of the best in the country when it comes to what we're doing here. Robert David, even Project Imagine,
Oh, they
all
did
these
great work,
things.
yeah.
And just the partnerships that we've cultivated, you know, we have truly become a model for how to turn around crime situations in a community.
You mentioned bike share earlier, and I'll bring that up into the respect that you've been at the vanguard of a lot of little minor, we call them minor things, but they're quality of life things, just little things that make a city a little bit better to live in. Bike share, again, even if only 1% of the population participates, that's a nicety. That's a good thing. Splash pads, again, not everyone has kids, but by gosh, when you're trying to get people to come to your town and you don't have a few things that, say, a Greensboro does, a Lynchburg does, a Roanoke does, they're gonna notice that. And so just little things like that are part of that big list of stuff we can put together and say, hey, here's what we got. Check this off. And it adds up very quickly.
Absolutely. You know, the interesting thing about the splash pads is that a handful of years ago, Councilman Buckner and I did this initiative called 100 Ways in 100 Days, where we put it out to the community. We said, send us your ideas. Send us things you want to see in the community. And we combined it all into this list of 100 different things and that we gathered over a 100-day period.
Y'all got more than 100, I think.
Oh, yeah. And it was and a lot of them overlap, so we kind of combined them and we did things. But
Yeah.
the splash parks were in there so much, some type of outdoor water recreation. It for years had been mentioned to us and particularly popped up in that 100 Ways in 100 Days initiative.
Right.
But even at council meetings, and because, look, Burlington had it, Eden had
Yeah.
it, Alta Vista, these other places had it, and we didn't. And folks said, why don't we have it? And so, you know, it's interesting. I kind of hear some comments and things sometimes lately about the splash pads. This was not something council pulled out of thin air.
No.
This was in response to our citizens speaking to us and saying we wanted, and we said not only are we going to do it, we're not just going to build one off the highway somewhere and make
Right.
people drive to it. We're going to put one over
In
on
the
3rd Avenue.
neighborhoods,
We're going to
yes.
make them as accessible as possible to as many people as possible. So 3rd Avenue, Green Street, and now we're building a much larger one at Blue Park that serves numerous neighborhoods. And so, again, for folks who have young families, they have loved it. But even if you're not, I understand it may not be everybody's cup of tea. But again, we try to hear the feedback of all of our citizens, and this was in response to a large number of folks who wanted, again, these quality of life improvements in the community. And so, you know, if we didn't thrill you on this one, maybe we'll get you on
We'll
one
get
of
you
the
on
other
next
things.
one, yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean, we are seeing a very neighborhood-oriented approach from council. Now, at the same time, yes, we're trying to get industries in here. We're looking beyond the city for this and that. We need the tax base, no doubt. But in community development, we're getting ready to have the planned Danville adoption later this year, which is a very comprehensive look at, and it's not just a zoning document. It's a quality of life document. But one of the focuses of that is neighborhood development, neighborhood enrichment. You started National Night Out this week at one of the jewels of neighborhood development, that Westmoreland Park that's been renovated and looks fantastic.
It does. And, you know, I think, again, I think sometimes we get wrapped up too much in the bigness of things, and we
Sure.
think everything has to be
A casino.
this huge deal or
Yeah.
whatever. And sometimes folks will say to me, I'd like to help out, but I can't do this, whatever this big thing is. What I think I wish we could all realize is that if each person did something to improve their block or their neighborhood
Yeah.
or their street, how much of a widespread impact that could have across our city if each kind of little area did that and see. But what we've seen in Westmoreland, phenomenal. And we're investing back in, we're repaving streets now. We've upped the amount of funds to go into that to rebuild neighborhood infrastructure. We're looking, housing development, what we're doing with there. I want to see more things we can do more to help entrepreneurship in neighborhoods. Even some of these kind of smaller communities, they don't have to be all large shopping centers. A little store on the corner, or a restaurant, or a cafe or something. You used to see a lot of that in years past, where you had these kind of small neighborhood restaurant or things. I want to bring some more of that to Danville and some of these places too. Let's encourage our citizens to show their talent and have that entrepreneurial spirit.
Folks, he doesn't just have great ideas. He'll give you his cell phone number. Give us that number again.
My cell phone number is 434-548-5335. You can call me. You can text me. That's what I'm there to do, is to help folks. And if there's a problem that City Council can help with, I want to know about it. I genuinely mean that, and that is something that no matter what part of the city you live in, no matter what church you go to, what your affiliation is, if you live in the city of Danville, I work for you. And so I want to do everything I can to help, and that's what I'm there for.
He's Lee Vogler, folks. He's an incumbent. He's running for re-election to Danville City Council. You don't have to wait till November 5th. You can go vote right now, thanks to the pre-COVID, relaxed early voting laws in Virginia. No excuse absentee voting, early voting, mail-in voting, all that good stuff. Lee, thanks for stopping by tonight. We just killed 15 minutes like it was nothing.
Thank you, Chuck, and go Eagles.
Eagles up 42-0, and the Lee Vogler for City Council halftime show will continue. We'll have some halftime numbers here, and they're going to be fun numbers to check out because the Eagles are up 42-0. We'll bring you back for more in 2 minutes.